I think we'll get this thing started. It's about 5 after 5. People can float in as they will. Thank you all for coming. Whether you were compelled to be here or not, we appreciate it. I think most of you in the room know who I am. A couple of you might not. T.C. Brown. I taught the new media course this semester. One thing you could say about it was that it wasn't overwhelming, the load of students. Basically, I had this guy, Senior Spencer Hickey, often called him the Army of One, which he probably got tired of hearing, but in fact he was, which is an interesting situation because we'll talk about this in a second, but if and when you take this course, it's a heavy workload. It's not easy to do this stuff. Some people might be intimidated to be the only student in the class, but Spencer was not. He embraced it. We basically started very simply. Journalists tell stories. That's it. Simple as that. That's the gig. And if you boil down this course, this was a semester-long project, an important story, and you have to learn and tell it across multiple platforms, all right? And that's the way of the world now. That's how things are. You guys all know this. Different channels, though, take different techniques. You can't take a newspaper story, a 100-inch newspaper story, and slap it on a website. Well, you can, but nobody's going to read it. So you have to go with the flow of how things work. For those of you who are going to pursue this as a career, I strongly suggest if you don't know these techniques and formats now that you learn it, because when you graduate and go to apply for a job, if you're not an AMJ, all media journalist, they're not even going to look at you. This is the way things are now. And Dr. Costu wanted me to note that we're changing formats up a little bit next year. So those who are going to be journalism majors are going to be, this is going to be a required course. Advanced media course is no longer an elective. It'll be a full credit, which it should be because it's a lot of work, like I said. But it's also fun. I'm just going to briefly say how we got this thing rolling with Spencer. Initially, we looked at professional news organizations' multimedia projects. What's out there, what's been done, and there's a lot of good stuff. Then Spencer brought to the table a whole lot of story ideas. We kicked that around and came up with OWU Green Initiatives and Programs, and that's kind of a spin-off, and he did this, like, I don't know, 5,000-inch story last year on, you know, the protests, and there's no sustainability coordinator here, and it's a big issue, and it's important, especially to college-age kids who are coming in and trying to find a school. So then we had to figure out, all right, how do we present this plan? You know, it's not just a text story, right? It's not just pictures. Spencer came up with the idea, and it was a good one, to do it on WordPress, which is an online open source website creation tool. And it was a great choice because you can easily link to it, and there's a lot of different platforms that allow you to tell stories in different ways. We discussed the story, we planned it, we organized it, we storyboarded it, all right? I handed him the ball, and he ran with it. We met weekly. That wasn't to say we never had contact again. We met every week. We talked about problems, hurdles, go this way, go that way, do this, do that. And the result is what you're going to see here, multimedia special report on OWU sustainability. And so I'm going to shut up now. And yes, you in the back.
Let me just add, this is our second time that we've taught this class.
Correct.
Last semester, we had 4 students take it and do it as a team project, and they explored Obamacare.
Yes.
So we don't have to just limit the topics to something on campus.
No, that's right. That's right. We chose to do that, but yeah, it's a wide open field, especially if we get more people. And I would, you know, right now we have, to my knowledge, we have 2 people signed up for next semester. And again, next year is going to be a different format. It'll be a full credit course, and so we're still figuring out how that's all going to work. So think about it. It is fun. It's a lot of work, but it's worth it. So I'm going to let Spencer take it from here and tell you how it all works. You want to ice down?
Not yet.
Okay.
When they do that, as TC said, my project's focused on sustainability here at Ohio Wesleyan, which really got started back in 2008 when the Sagan National Colloquium, which is an annual speaker series focused around a central theme, looked at cultivating a green campus here at Ohio Wesleyan. This led students to seek a lot more green action than had been currently going on at that time. And in the spring of 2009, President Rob Jones, who I believe was in his first actual year at the university, created the President's Task Force on sustainability in order to look at whether Ohio Wesleyan should sign the President's President's Climate Commitment, which is a document I looked at of 684 institutions have signed it, pledging to do efforts to reduce carbon emissions down to zero when possible. Thanks to work by the President's Task Force on Sustainability, the university received a government grant that allowed us to hire a sustainability coordinator, Sean Kinghorn, which a lot of you, if you were here last year, probably heard about when there was the protests. Kinghorn worked with students and professors to create a number of programs and energy conservation methods, not all of which were really widely known. Probably the one that was most well known would be the low-flow shower heads, which if you're a senior, maybe a junior like myself, I'm sure you remember the controversy about those. When the grant ran out, though, as was scheduled to do, only lasting 2 years, students tried to convince the administration to create a permanent position for a sustainability coordinator, and ultimately they camped out during the Board of Trustees visit in October of 2013. The main issue for the university that led them not to create this position, though, was a lack of funding available. And my coverage of the Tent City camp out in 2013 is what led me to select this project after a couple other ideas that TC mixed. While some of the more visible programs, and this is what I found and we've been talking about, are currently inactive now, things like the May Move Out, the Free Store, post-consumer composting, there are several programs that the university handles more behind the scenes, often without direct student involvement. That Buildings and Grounds, for instance, does allow for innovation projects. Chartwell's Cooks will do pre-consumer composting, and these things, in some cases, are more efficient than the past programs that aren't really active right now, but a lot of students don't know about them. Going into that, one of the things I did for this homepage, if you've seen the site, is I have a list of major figures in sustainability efforts, and I asked them the question, how have things changed since last year in terms of the sustainability coordinator, which was my jumping off point for this project, since that was a big unanswered question in the protest. They focused on that, and I was looking at what's changed since that happened last year. You probably know there's a hiring freeze, so we don't have a sustainability
A lot has
coordinator.
happened. Maybe there's some behind the scenes stuff going on that I don't know about, but it seems like the administration has kind of reached at least what it looks like to be kind of a dead end with dealing with things at this point, which is disappointing, and I'd like to see it move forward in the future, and I don't think students are giving it up by any means, but at this point it seems like it's kind of at a standstill.
And that was Riley Reynolds, the current moderator of Treehouse, and someone who was involved in the Tent City protests last year. Next we'll be bringing up a brief interview I did with Tom Wolber on the same question. He just come back to the
Well,
cleanup program,
unfortunately,
so that's why he's dressed in a sleeveless t-shirt with dirt on it. I
since the
wanted to tell you that.
departure of Sean Kinghorn, the sustainability coordinator, sustainability efforts have, in my personal opinion, deteriorated on campus. We seem to have gone backward rather than forward. 2 years ago, 3 years ago, while Sean Kinghorn was here, there are many, many things Ohio Wesleyan did and excelled at. For example, the May Move Out was a very successful program. Unfortunately, since his departure meant the discontinuation of many of these things.
And Tom Wolber was chair of the Sustainability Task Force last year, so he saw a lot of the programs that were deteriorating, as he put it. And then I talked to President Jones, asking him about things. He talked a lot about individual efforts, particularly by the head of Buildings and Grounds, Peter Shantz.